get to our spotlight on Rathbone. Let's get that cool graphic up here, Alex. My favorite. I work so hard on this every day here. I just, my spotlight. Look at that. You looks on the ticker, and there it is. Spotlight, Jack Rathbone. So the stats don't really pop off the page for Jack Rathbone. He's got 10 NHL games this season, 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points, 12 shots. His expected control of goals for is 41.7%. That's not great. That means when he's on the ice, the expected goals, his team is only going to score 41% of them. And he's averaging 14 minutes and 7 seconds of ice time. I sent out the tweet and asked for some people to give their thoughts on Jack Rathbone as well. And we'll do the same thing here in the chat. I'll start it with you here, Quads. What is the future here for Jack Rathbone? And is there a future? I think could be another question you could ask here with the Vancouver Canucks and Jack Rathbone. He's in a tough spot. I think with the organization, but also in his own career, right? Like this is a guy who has some NHL talent. There is certainly a bunch of things in his game when he's playing his best. When he's playing his best, he's an NHLer. That's for sure. But the fit in Vancouver with guys like OEL and Quinn Hughes and, some other guys coming in here now on the left side, it is going to be very difficult for this guy to find that spot in the Vancouver Canucks lineup long term. And Rick Tocchet was asked about it today. He mentioned a couple things of like, hey, like, there's that. I think Kuz asked him, like, hey, there's that thought around the league that 2 small guys can't be in the lineup together. And Rathbone's not small. He's smaller. But can he also be in a lineup at the same time that Christian Wolanin's in and also Quinn Hughes is in? And Tocchet kind of said it's about the player, right? It's about what the player does with, I guess, being a little bit shorter. Can they still do the little things that make a lot of sense? And a lot of it is physically, right? Like you need to be able to chase pucks down in your own zone. You have to be quick to get that puck up to your forwards, everything. So your thoughts on Jack Rathbone and what's next? Like what's next for Rathbone as a Canuck?
Do you think, and I don't mean to just immediately pose a question to you, but it's more of a rhetorical question. It's just, I don't want to answer right now because I want to know how these final games go, right? Like he hasn't had a ton of time playing under Rick Tocchet, and we wondered aloud when when Tocchet took over, if maybe the Tocchet system and the team playing just overall better defense, like the forwards helping out a little bit more, supporting on breakouts, all that stuff we've seen under Rick Tocchet, maybe that would help Jack Rathbone be an overall better defenseman and that he would be able to find better results. I don't know about you, Chris, but so far so good. I think he's been good. I think he's at least deserves a longer look before we come to hard conclusions on him, right? I think that right now Jack Rathbone's going to get an extended look here, and obviously emergency recall kind of complicates things a little bit, but I think he needs to just run with whatever opportunity he's given and then come into camp. I think training camp is where it's basically make or break. And it's funny that we're saying that because that was kind of the conversation around Rathbone coming into this year, right? Like it was kind of like, this is the last or, first training camp of the rest of your life. You know what I mean? For Rathbone. So yeah. I think it's same sort of deal next year is what does he do after a summer? Does he look like he can be better? Like, let's be honest here. He's probably better than Oliver Ekman-Larsson has been this year, right? And sure. I know OEL, they're thinking of an OEL bounce back next year. We'll see what actually happens with OEL, but like it's the question of, is there a spot for Jack Rathbone on this team? And I think if he continues to play the way he has under 2-3 games under Rick Tocchet here, that he will have a spot. Like there will be a spot for him penciled in. He's got to go earn it in training camp, but there's a spot for Rathbone on this blue line. There has to be. If he earns it, there has to be a spot for him.
I don't think there is to start next season, right? I think he's an Abbotsford kid unless he's really like it's, Tocchet talked about it too. We have a quote from him we'll get in just a second here because I asked him about his initial impressions, and basically a lot of the stuff you just said, Rick mentioned as well, but it's like Christian Wolanin's jumped him in the depth, and that's massive. It's going to really depend on what happens with OEL. Like we don't know. Nobody knows what's going on with OEL. OEL doesn't know what's going on with OEL. So whatever happens here, like the left side, to me, I think they're going to try and upgrade one of those spots. I think the 2 spots the Canucks are going to really try and upgrade this season are a guy who can play with Filip Hronek and a guy to play 3C. And if you bring in a guy who can play with Filip Hronek, that locks down your second pair. You already have OEL making, buttloads of money. Oh, how much I made at the casino last night. But Quinn Hughes is also there. It's very hard for me to find a spot when guys like, Christian Wolanin have jumped him in the depth charts, and Guillaume Brisebois even had a run here where like he can play with Tyler Myers, I think, and is probably a better fit with Tyler Myers than Jack Rathbone is. To me, it's about the fit, right? Like it's not like there's if the Canucks had a reliable right shot defenseman to play on your bottom pairing, Luke Shen would be great option there. But like that guy would probably be playing with Quinn Hughes in the first place. It's why Luke Shen was playing with Quinn Hughes, right? So it's not like they can build two pairings. They're not going to build a pairing for Jack Rathbone. He's got to just play himself into the lineup somehow. And I think a lot of that's going to come from his play in Abbotsford. But let's hear from Rick Tocchet. I asked him today about Jack Rathbone and his thoughts on him through a few games here and maybe what we can expect to see in the offseason. So here's Tocchet talking about Rathbone.
I think these last couple of games he's played, he's come a long way. I think he's had just an okay year in the minors from what I've watched him a little bit, but I think there's once again there's something there. Can he take these whatever games he's going to play left? 5-6 games this year I think he's played. Can he take that into the next level? That's really what it comes down to. And then let's face it, in training camp, he's got to shine. Like he's got to be in one of the best shaped guys, and he's got to be like from the day one. You want to impress the coaching staff, so he's got to gear himself up for that.
Yeah, he's going to need a Will Lockwood-esque training camp, as we remember out in Abbotsford. Will Lockwood dominant at that. But I do want to get to a comment a little bit earlier here in the chat. I did miss it, but I read it and I wanted to get back to it. Corey Anderson had a great comment here. Rathbone's biggest asset is running a power play, which this team doesn't need, and he struggles still to defend at this level. All pretty accurate, right? I think that's the thing. Like if Rathbone was a incredible defender, he would be playing with Filip Hronek. That would be your second pairing, but he's not at the NHL level yet. And it's a great point from Corey that like Rathbone he's at his best on a power play, right? Like that's what he did so well in Abbotsford last season. He's done it throughout his basically hockey life. And now with Hronek probably running the second unit next year, maybe there's a chance, because it sounds like Tocchet likes two defensemen on the second unit. Like Rathbone's probably, to me, he's the third best option from the defense core to run a power play. So if you need three guys because you got to do two on the second unit, Rathbone makes sense. He's got the shot that can work from the right half wall as well, if that's the direction that you want to go with, or, kind of switch things up a little bit and do more of like a two guys at the blue line type of thing. You have some options there, but it is going to be tough because of the style of play that he has. It's actually interesting. You can almost mix this in with and this is like completely, I don't think anybody in Canucks podcast world is making this type of transition. But the Rathbone to Truscott transition, the reason why you like Jacob Truscott as a prospect is because he has such a great fit as a defenseman for what the Canucks are looking for. He's a support defenseman. You like these guys. Like he's a guy who can help kind of boost the player that he's playing with. Rathbone, I don't think is that. Rathbone has some skills, but you want a player to play and fit with him. Guys like Jacob Truscott, Guillaume Brisebois is even kind of an example of that, who kind of just blends with another guy and can make a little bit of sense playing that way. And that's the other thing. It's like the things that Rathbone does well are the same things that Christian Wolanin does well. Like he moves the puck really well. He probably does it better than Rathbone right now at the NHL level. Probably defends better than Rathbone at the NHL level. It's going to be really hard for Rathbone to find a spot here in the NHL. I think he'll start in Abbotsford if he's here next year and he's not dealt in the summer. And I think that'll be a really fun story for the Abbotsford Canucks, having Aiden McDonough and Jack Rathbone down there playing together, likely on the first power play unit. But right now, going into next season, I don't think Rathbone's going to be one of the 6 or maybe even 8 defensemen that they roll into the season with. Like, I don't think he's in that spot, unfortunately. He needs a year to a really good summer. He needs a really good camp. He needs to be really consistent throughout the year. Then he gets back in NHL games. But it's going to be difficult, man. Like it is going to be difficult, but at least the difficulty is coming from other guys playing well. Christian Wolanin coming here to this organization. Did we know who this guy was? Alex did. Alex was a big fan of the Ottawa Senators pick, but he's jumped Rathbone, and that's a good thing. That's internal competition kind of showing your depth chart how it should be. Like that is a good thing in the end. It's just unfortunate for Rathbone, who we both love. Been on this show a million times. We'll get him on in the summer again. But yeah, it's coming from the internal competition, and this is what happens. The players that you maybe really like as a person or really like as a prospect, they can get jumped by a veteran if the veteran finds a good role with an organization. I think that's what happened with Wolanin here.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the Wolanin Rathbone comparison because like Wolanin is higher than Rathbone on the team's depth chart, right? And you talked about the power play success for Rathbone. I'd say probably better at that than Wolanin is, but Wolanin's
I
better
don't
at
know.
defending it. Okay, well,
I think
let's just give it to
for a
Rathbone for
shot,
argument's sake.
yeah, sure. With Rathbone, like he has a better shot, but what Wolanin was doing at the HL level on the power play was, there's a reason why he was the top of the league in points. Like he was really
Yeah.
good on the power play.
And I think the thing that really separates them is that Wolanin's probably better at defending at 5-on-5. And I think that's what you're looking for, in all honesty, in a third pairing defender. Like you don't need a power play quarterback when it's a third pairing guy, right? So that's kind of the spot that Rathbone finds himself in, is it's just he really needs to improve on his defense. And look, like I think he takes a little bit too much heat for that. Just sometimes you notice it where even decision making with like the split second before he gets the puck, I think that's where you notice it. It's not with the puck. Like when he has the puck, usually he makes the right play. It's the split second before he's picking up the puck, like turning into danger or not going the direction you thought he was gonna go. And it just like I think that's it with Rathbone, is just the defending isn't quite up to NHL caliber, whereas Wolanin, I think you give him the edge there. And I think that's what it's ultimately going to come down to, is which of these guys can defend better at 5-on-5, because that's what you're looking for in a third pairing guy. You don't need a power play quarterback in your third pairing defenseman. When you have Quinn Hughes on your team, when you have Philip Roenick, I think that's what it really comes down to be honest with you. So yeah, like you give the edge to a guy like Wolanin here. So it's a big summer for Rathbone. It's a big summer for a lot of guys, and we keep talking about it. But Rathbone, that's a prime example of it.
Yeah, and I think what's also difficult for a guy like Jack Rathbone, who, listen, he's got the label, right? Fairly or unfairly, he's got the label that he's not a great defender at the NHL level. That type of label doesn't disappear after 2 or 3 good games. That label doesn't disappear after 2 or 3 good seasons sometimes for players, right? Like every time that he is pushed off of a puck in the corner, people are noting it because they're like, you already have that prior knowledge in your head of the label of him, like, oh, not being a great defender. So every time that he gets pushed around by a bigger guy, you're thinking, like, it clicks in your head. There's something about it where you're like, like this is a player who, is not good at this, and it's going to be very difficult for him to shake that. I think that's going to be really hard. Not being able to defend as a defenseman, that's a thing that it's not a great label to have. And I do think it's not exactly fair either. Like I do think you can watch games with Jack Rathbone where he defends well throughout a whole game. Like if he's playing 14 minutes tonight, I bet he doesn't make that many errors defensively in his own zone. It's also been a little bit difficult for him throughout the season. Consistency is obviously one thing. I think it's a good chance for him to get an opportunity to play in front of Rick Tocchet this year. But can we get his line mates up here, his pairing, the minutes here, Alex, with Jack Rathbone? Because we do just have a little list of who he's played with this season. 54 minutes with Kyle Burrows. That's the top guy he's been with. Not great Corsi numbers. Been on the ice for 2 goals for, 1 goal against. Ethan Barry's played 40 minutes with. He's been on the ice for 2 goals for, 2 goals against. Tyler Myers, here's the thing. This is the thing. Like, Jack Rathbone doesn't work with Tyler Myers. It's been shown over the years now in Jack Rathbone's small NHL career. They don't work well together. They've been on the ice for just shy of 12 minutes. No goals scored, 2 goals against. And that's what's really hard too, is the fact that Myers might end up being your third pairing guy, and Rathbone would have to win a spot there. Like, Wolanin makes a lot more sense with Tyler Myers just as a fit. And that's another knock against the chances for Rathbone to be an NHLer to start next season. So we'll have to see what happens. But I think, man, all the talk here about Christian Wolanin, I think he's going to be the next guy we have to spotlight here. And it might be a little more positive, which is unfortunate. We had a lot of, I still do have some hope that Rathbone has a really big summer this summer coming up here and gets an opportunity to play at the NHL next year. I hope that he is one of those guys that shines at training camp. He's going to turn 24 this summer. It's, do or die time. Last year, like we talked about this at the start of the year, that it was go time for Rathbone. Like Rathbone had to get up and go, make an impact. Now, next season's do or die, right? Are you going to be an AHL or are you going to be an NHLer? Like training camp's going to tell you a lot about that with Jack Rathbone. So it'll be interested to see what happens there. I did